Side note, Ben over here is stroking his beard like an evil mastermind. Like, yes, I shall take that pattern and then make it my own. Hello, and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We're here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. She has about 21 years, I have about 23. And tonight we are going to be talking about adjusting to your partner's style. And we're going to be looking at Robert Royston and Victoria Hank from Boogie 2018.
Link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch. And when you're done, we'll get to analyzing. All right, to the screen share.
So this particular comp, we have two very different songs. And this first one, I would say, is more more Victoria's style. So we have a more like modern kind of hip hop style almost. Our second song that we have is a very old style. Can't Help Myself, I think. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's very old school and it's definitely more Robert style. So one thing, that we're kind of looking at here is that overall you can kind of see the different styles on both of them, really, like the styles that they're used to and the styles that they don't frequently use. And it looks a little bit different on both of them, but they're also just kind of staying true to their own body and their own like movement, while also incorporating those different techniques and movements that they don't generally add in. So like with Royston, we see him. I know. We see him kind of in this first dance. He adds in a lot of sharper movement, I would say. That's a little bit more isolated in certain spots than generally I see in his, normal dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more to match what Victoria does. Victoria is really good with isolations and really creating sharp, strong movements. And it's not like the entire chunk of song that you can see him doing that. Like you can see his style within some of these moments, like right here, like this, it just looks like Royston.
Mm-hmm.
But then we can really see when he's taking the opportunity to style some things, that's when he is experimenting with different things that he doesn't usually play around with.
Mm-hmm. He's basically taking the same kind of structure and phrasing that he is an expert at and just adjusting. I'm gonna let someone in. Whoa, come back, screen. And just adjusting how he's playing and the moments that structurally he normally plays.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that's also really great about the way that he's adjusting is that he's waiting and watching what Victoria does in order to kind of mimic it. Like he's not, for the most part, just doing this on his own. He's kind of working with what she's doing because, that's her style. That's her normal. Yeah, and I think that is something really important. Yeah. He's really waiting to see what she's doing before he does anything.
Yeah, this is a good example of the picture frame analogy for leading. The idea that like the leader isn't literally a picture frame, it's more metaphorical, but the idea that he has created the time and space and is just having that patience and paying attention to Victoria while she's having this moment, while still giving her the connection that she needs. Like you can tell that he's got a lot of tension in his arm to be able to give tension through that handhold. This is probably my favorite moment of this whole thing. Her sarcastic kick plus eye contact.
It's great. It's a really great choice.
And she develops it so nicely.
And Royston does a great job of letting her do what she's going to do.
You're like, yes, I love that.
And it's funny because here we have her come around and she does something that I would say is maybe a little bit more Royston style.
Because this is the lyric 60s. I'm not sure she's isolating that so well. I don't think he can feel it. So unless he's got really intense peripheral vision, I don't think he had any idea she did that.
I don't think so. But I love that she chose to incorporate that.
Me too.
I think that that's something that kind of shows that like you don't have to stick to what is, you know, maybe what you've defined as your own style. You can play around with other things.
Yeah, and this is a moment where she's harking back to a more classic style of swing and just older dancing in general. The simple swivels.
Well, that's something we've kind of talked about before, where like doing something outside of what your style generally is can look awkward, but it, because of the placement of what she did, because it was very musical, it didn't look awkward or out of place. Her face.
It's so great. And it's actually a really important part of selling that movement and maintaining the tone of their partnership and also her brand, as it were.
This looks choreographed.
This is like a signature Robert and Victoria.
Yep.
They find a way to put it into basically any musically appropriate spotlight they're in together.
And stall.
We should maybe ask him when he's on our panel the origin story for this pattern, because I'd be curious.
I know.
But that's another example, because like, does he do that with anyone else? No, he does that with Victoria. And it's a way of him like honoring her specialty. I think one of the things that makes them so engaging when they draw each other is they both have the time of their lives getting to dance the other person's primary style.
Yeah.
It's like they're both taking a field trip. They both love it so much, getting to play with each other and do what they're really good at on their own, but also venture into what their partner is really good at. And that right there, that kickball change that Victoria just did, the arm swing, that's a much more classic swing movement where she's trying to match his style.
Yeah, kind of bring it back. After we have this very off the path. It's like, all right, let's go back to some good solid swing here.
Right. Reminds me of the one time I did a Strictly Swing with Chris Jones at So Swing, and he did his Chris No Bones Jones, like, classic.
Yeah.
If Chris Jones doesn't do this move, he's not Chris Jones kind
Yeah.
of move. However, I don't think he was used to ever, I don't think he'd ever done it with someone my height. And he pulled my hand down when he went down to the floor. And he did it violently enough that if I had not, like, done a quick, like, weight shift underneath myself and then spin to make it look like I moved on purpose, instead of I was saving my life, I would have just collapsed over him, which would have been bad. And I'm always retroactively embarrassed. I'm like, could people tell that I was trying to save our lives? I wasn't trying to upstage him. That was damage control. But anyways. If you're determined enough, you can find that dance on YouTube, but I will not link it above because that is
I actually
8
just
years
watched
old.
that one recently.
Why? I was such a baby.
I don't remember why it came up, but I ended up watching it. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right, so here we're coming into another moment of more like staccato hip hop based movement. And I love Royston's like really smug expression. He's like, yeah, I can do side to other side. Yeah. And I love the way she communicates. Like, she's really like, I got an idea. She's paying attention. This might actually be a really good thumbnail. I'm gonna some crumping. And he's like, all right. I'll see your crump and I'll raise you flaily crump. I love his head shake at the end. He's like, was that it? Did I do it right?
She's like, yes, that was what I wanted.
That's what we all wanted. And it made everyone so happy.
Deborah looks like she's crying.
I know. I kind of am too, not gonna lie.
But it's such a great moment that she really gave him something to work with rather than him having to figure out like, oh, what do I do here? She's like, oh no, this is what I want you to do.
Yep. A really good example of call and response. I love how he just like lets go of her. She's like, wait.
So good.
It's beautiful.
Then we get back to some normal swing content
with some jitter feet. Now we have another brilliant setup because, like, even though the last example that we just covered was a call and response that Victoria initiated, Robert is the one who set them up in that position that allowed that to happen. So here's another example where he is creating the time and the space for Victoria to provide an idea that he can then respond to. So it's not, Victoria isn't at all having to fight for time and space to contribute to the dance. Robert is consistently providing that time and space for her and then paying very close attention while she's doing something. And this is one where he's like, I've sort of got an idea, because he's in this pose and he does a minor pop, but it's kind of hesitant. And it's so cute. And then Victoria's like, oh yeah, I got this. Wait for it. Every time I see her do this, I want to visit my chiropractor right away.
There's a lot of body.
No, my spine just goes, oh, we used to be able to do that. Now we have to use therapy balls for like an hour to get that kind of mobility back.
I think one really important thing if we're talking about, adjusting to your partner's style, I think that allowing your partner to lead you into that style is super important. I think that there's not always a lot of attention given to that. Like, I think that sometimes people are just like, oh, I hear this style of the song. I know this is my partner's style. I just have to like do things that are relevant to that rather than being like, okay, let's see what they're going to do first, and then I can copy that. I don't have to come up with it on my own if it's not, something that I would normally do to this point in the music.
Yeah. And I think we talked about that. I don't know on which recent episode, but just the idea that if you draw someone and you know that based on the song that comes on, your partner is the expert in this scenario, regardless of what role you're dancing, you default to them and you let them drive. Because not only is that a sign of respect, which can be really meaningful to that person, but it allows for so much better dancing and more fun as a partnership when you lean on each other's strengths instead of trying to raise yourself up to that level before them. You let them carry you. It can sound bad when put that way, but it really is an important skill to develop, to let your partner carry you if they're significantly better at you in one particular area.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add to that is that it's important for you to be practicing, these different styles on your own before you get into these situations where, it might come up that you have to either mimic or, do something that is out of your style. Practicing out of your style is really important, because then in those moments, even if it's not something that you use on a regular basis, your body will know what you're going for. And it'll more easily fall into that movement when you're set up for it correctly, or when you have that moment where you're like, oh, I need to do that now.
Yep. So real quick, we covered Ben Morris in a couple of episodes last month, and Ben led this pattern, I think, in both dances while looking at Royston sitting in his chair. So because that's a very signature Robert Royston move.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna skip past the skipping. Pun not intended.
So I love that we have these boogie walks coming in when they're really across the floor from each other. I think that is such a staple movement in more old school swing that I think it's so appropriate that that's what they started off this particular song doing. Because, especially they're really far apart. Like,
yeah, I'll go back
you could
a little
do something
bit farther
else.
so you can see. We start way out here.
Yeah. I love how the camera's like, oh, I need to like go get this in frame.
Champions, making a cameraman's work harder every day. Just as a side note, if Tara Trafser is in the room, you want to do a high kick before you go into your boogie walks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I keep waiting for my moment to shine in that. It will come.
Yeah. Someday.
So this style of music is much more appropriate for like Royston's style and his history with West Coast swing.
Mm-hmm.
So for this song, he is doing significantly more of the driving. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's still creating moments for them to be a partnership and play, but he's doing more of the initiating. This heart is so aggressive.
I know. They tried. And immediately we have more of that like double resistance feel going on in most of these patterns.
Yeah. And more vertical pulse.
Mm-hmm. Neither of which are something that you would frequently see in Victoria's styling, like in her own dancing. But just the fact that she realizes that, okay, this is what we're doing now. Let me adjust to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it still looks like her dancing, just tweaked a little bit.
I might want to talk about how that is led, because I feel like that is not talked about
that
enough.
Before.
I'm not sure we actually had a a video to watch.
I think we did Royston with Lemery.
Oh. Well, I'm going to talk about it again.
Go ahead.
So it's really important that what happens is basically the leader places their right leg in between the follows 2 feet, but closer to the follow's right foot. And then you just leave it there. You just leave your knee in between the follow's knees. You don't hit them. You don't knee them. You just kind of put it there as an obstacle that they then run into and react. So he's not kicking her leg. He's just creating an obstacle that then she reacts to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really important distinction. Please do not murder Follow's knees. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And because she's in between that weight transfer, she doesn't have weight fully on either foot. That's why we can so easily get this transition where she brings up and around the foot.
Yep.
If she's fully weight committed, it's not going to work very well.
I also want to highlight how Robert's doing a really lovely job of creating a center counterpoint with that handhold. So that way she has something to resist away from, because he's not driving this hand down the slot. He's keeping it more in his space. And that helps give her just some extra stability, which is in part why they're able to go into this. Because while I have no doubt Victoria could do it with just the closed position handhold on her left shoulder blade, because she's magical. It would be a lot harder if Robert was not also offering that open hand with connection. And you can see how he's really keeping it on his side of the equation, so that way she can have a really stable frame and she's not having to change it while she's in this balance compromised position.
And I want to add in that Victoria doesn't continue that movement past the moment where it looks okay. Because we start to get at the very end of this to this point where she is at a little bit of an awkward angle. If they went any more, it would become awkward for her to exit. And she doesn't let it go that long. I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind when you go into any like rides or anything that uses momentum. If you get there and you start and you're not getting enough momentum, if you're getting off balance, if it's starting to look not good, stop.
Yes.
Because that's one of those things that will look as bad as it feels.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of times that, you know, things do not look as bad as they feel, but that is one of those things that will.
Yes. And this one would also have the added struggle that because of how Robert is stepping outside his center, if she were to keep trending downwards, it would pull him forward and down, and the integrity of both of them would collapse.
Yeah, as soon as she starts getting to a point where she's really off balance, she puts her foot down.
Melissa looked a little worried there for a second. So here's another instance of Robert leading a more classic, like kickball change swivels situation, and Victoria is dancing it along with him with really great classic technique. It's awesome.
And I want to add in that the reason that she so easily falls into those is because as she's coming around, she's staying with that same timing, with that swung timing, really. And she's sticking with those classic moves that she knows is going to be put in. So then she just very easily transitions into it because she's starting off actually facing the audience, and then she sees what he's doing, but can very easily rotate facing him and then, continue with him.
I have the song stuck in my head already. Do you want to let Gary in so he can join us? He looks like he's defying gravity right here.
I know. And Victoria is still staying with that swung time as she's going into those moves and really allowing him to lead her through things.
Do you want to define swung timing just in case someone watching the replay has never heard of that before?
Straight time versus swung time is basically when you are adding a movement on the like E and A, instead of having like one and two and, you're like pushing the movement more towards the beat or the next beat.
Yeah, so straight timing is where the beat in between the beats is equidistant. Whereas with a more swung timing, what's a really blinding color? It's not, oh geez, this color palette is not that varied. Whereas swung timing is more around here. And so you have more distance between the first two weight transfers than the second two. Oh, that was satisfying. I've always wanted a whiteboard available to me when I've talked about swung timing before. Oh, that was satisfying.
It's something that makes it makes the movement with like the music match better, because if you're doing straight time with like the more swing music, it's going to look a little off. It's going to feel better to you to use swung time. But I will say that's not the only situation in which you can use swung time. Swung time is really helpful in situations where you're dancing to like a fast song. It helps because of the weight changes. it allows you to move through it a little bit faster.
Yeah,
It's easier
and
than straight timing.
because basically you're putting less weight on that part of the triple step
Mm-hmm.
in the swung timing because you literally don't have as much time to be on that foot.
Yep.
Whereas in straight timing, because it's equal distant, you have more time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, hot tip, you can dance swung time to straight timed music
And
and
it'll
reap the
sound.
benefits. There are some judges who actually prefer, I think, you to dance swung time regardless of the style of music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how prevalent that is, but I know that's something that I was recommended, and I enjoy it because it makes your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
It does.
Anyways, let's move on from the rainbow timing.
I love that Victoria really isn't trying to do too much styling here.
Mm-hmm.
She's really just keeping with what she knows and letting Robert lead her into all of the different stylings that
Mm-hmm.
are appropriate with the music.
Yep. Because really, it's like when Robert is leading to a song that is like his expertise, he's painting with the follow. So really, it's what Brandy says: if you draw Robert, you just follow and then you cash the check. She's ever since I heard her say that the first time, I'm like, yes. Um, whereas in the first song, he was creating those moments for Victoria to really like take the lead for the styling and then matching it. And that's a part of partnering. Like we've talked about it all night, but I think it's a part of partnering where you understand what your partner is good at and you let them be good at that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wish more people emphasize that and practice that.
And I will say that, while we're looking at a dance that is very equal in both parts. So we have, one song that's more current, one song that's more old school, and we have Victoria who has a very modern style and Royston who has a more old school style. So we have really equal parts in this particular dance. There's going to be times though that you draw somebody that doesn't have the experience or isn't, that's not their style, and neither is it, it's not yours either. So that's when having practiced those moments on your own and knowing really, how to move into certain things, it's going to be helpful in
Mm-hmm.
those moments.
Like for example, right here, Victoria is hitting a split weight pose to start, very similar to right before the crumping sequence in the first song. But Robert is very clearly doing a different kind of styling. And because she's paying so much attention and understands that she should default to his ideas for this song, she immediately pays attention and is able to collect her feet and catch on right away into this styling because she has done it with him before. She's practiced it.
Mm-hmm.
So the time between her not being 100% sure what's going on to getting on the same page as him is very short because of that practice
Mm-hmm.
and paying attention.
Yeah. And he also sets her up to follow along with it.
Yeah. I can't not think of John Lindo.
I know.
Anytime anyone leads this pattern. I love that she skips through it. That's just something, it's like her adding just a little bit to what he's leading because she could just walk it, but she skips it, which just emphasizes that vertical pulse that's appropriate for the song. And then I want to also highlight how much Robert is counterbalancing her ahead of time.
Yeah.
So the tension doesn't increase until after his right foot settles onto the ground and he applies his weight to his right foot. And then he has just a little bit of breath in the elbow. You can see from here to here, his arm gets like 2 inches longer. So he's really cushioning that and offering a resisted release for her. So that way she's not hitting a brick wall, because in this position as a follow, your shoulders are really compromised.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you cushion that impact as a leader is super important.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to point out that he's putting that left foot out as like in a braking position.
Yeah. So he could use it if he needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, speak of the devil.
I know.
This is a more old school sugar push, kind of
Yeah.
starburst hands. And then the way Royston is holding her hand, kind of like his thumb wrapped around the side we can't see and his fingers out. Some of us were actually taught that as what the second hand does in a sugar push.
What?
Yeah, that was how it was. So you had the leader's left follows right was normal handhold, leader's hand underneath. But when you offered the second hand for compression, you would offer that kind of sideways high five situation as a leader.
Oh, I hate that.
Oh yeah, it's gross. It has died, and I'm really happy about it. But some people do, I still think, technically teach it and dance it that way. So
Yeah.
it's not technically incorrect. I just have strong opinions about it.
Just doesn't seem like the most comfortable choice.
No, it's not. I think I actually want to highlight this. So this is one of those complex patterns that leaders enjoy leading a lot.
Yeah.
But I want to highlight how once Victoria starts spinning, she does not travel anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Robert is yeeting himself across the floor to compensate. And right here, she's not actually changing where her feet are. She's just pitching forward.
Yeah. Because she has that wrapper on the front of her body and she can lean into it.
Mm-hmm. It's just an important detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to make note that she isn't trying to add anything into this.
No,
Just
that would be
following.
unwise. This is a spin and survive moment as a follow. And if you are collected enough to make this look effortless, the pitch forward.
But I think that Victoria is definitely somebody who tries to put her own spin on a lot of different things. And I think that
pun.
yeah. But I think that had this not been her dancing with Royston to this particular song, she might have played around with it a little bit more in the way that she was going into it. But because of this specific situation, she just let it go, like right through, and didn't, try to change anything.
All right, so then we move into some classic, like, kick, ball change, hitch steps.
It's funny because this is actually one point where Victoria does kind of lead him into something styling wise.
Mm-hmm.
He is obviously leading the timing and everything, but just the way that she is hitching back, he isn't necessarily going into that immediately, but he sees that she's doing it. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? Good idea.
Yeah.
but she's not changing anything about what he's leading to do that.
Mm-hmm. Because just by the way he kind of preps into this and the way the hand prepped, it looked like maybe he wanted her to swivel.
Yeah.
Instead of just hitch back.
Yeah. Because that's definitely what he's doing, but
yeah,
the timing doesn't change, and she's not like changing anything about the handhold or what he's doing in order to do those hitches. And then he catches on with them.
I love how like they're so focused on each other and I'm so focused on them. It's like, oh, I should be talking. Because this is the kind of footwork sequence that's actually really interesting in West Coast Swing, because there are obviously classic shag sequences that you can just memorize, and they have a certain entrance, and if your leader starts leading it, you just know the sequence, you have it memorized, and you do it together. However, because of the nature of West Coast Swing Connection, there is the opportunity to lead a fair amount of what is going on. So like Robert is able to lead that triple towards the audience and this rotation. And the idea is, as a follow, you just want to try to maintain whatever rhythm structure you went into the pattern with. But you don't necessarily have to match your leader's timing. It's more that you follow the shaping. And you can just see how much Robert is doing to lead her rotation and direction with that open handhold. And he's just like eyes straight at her feet to make sure that the timing of his transitions in that handhold are appropriate for where her weight is. So he's not leading her to turn when she doesn't have the correct foot free. Because the timing of that can get really nuanced, and it's easy if you're not quite sure what you're doing yet to knock a follow off their center in a way that they need to compensate.
Yeah, and I want to add into that he's doing a really good job of paying attention to what she's doing, and the hand that he's leading with is very clear, but what he's doing is also very clear in his movements, and he's doing it in a slightly exaggerated way in order for her to very easily pick up on what he's doing.
Yes, yeah, he's doing it himself. Like seriously, trying to arm lead this sequence instead of body lead is potentially the most exhausting thing I've ever thought of. It's like you're trying to play Atari, but the Atari is the size of your bed. Anyway, hopefully that was funny. Moving on.
But yeah, sometimes these particular patterns that are, more shag inspired can be done very subtly. And that's fine if you have a partner that knows exactly what you're going for and what you're going into. But because, this I would say is not, Victoria's forte, it's not what she would choose to do. He's making it very obvious in what he's doing. And I think that is something that is very important to point out. If you're wanting somebody to copy you, do it very obviously.
Yes.
Don't be subtle about it.
And then I just want to highlight, we could spend an entire hour on this transition from rotation to center counterpoint for a hitch. But this is a moment to go back and watch over and over again, to pay attention to how Robert is setting up the handhold to resolve the swivel rotations right here, and then transition from this point into compression. So they've got compression right here, and he's using that compression to send her away from him and himself away from her. And at the really quickly after the compression is over, they're in tension. So compression, tension, compression, tension.
Yeah, this moment specifically is where having a variable frame is very important.
So here's a moment where Robert is kind of calling back to a little bit of the styles they were using in the previous song and allowing Victoria to have a more Victoria moment.
Yeah.
And I love that incorporation because it really balances out the partnership for this song.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to add into that just because the song is a certain style doesn't mean every single movement in that dance has to be of that style. Because I feel like a lot of times there's some harping on like blues music and people not dancing, in that style to the blues music. But that doesn't mean that every single movement that you do has to be something that fits that style. You can play around a little bit as long as the majority of the dance is going to fit that style. So it looks cohesive.
Right. Can you communicate to anybody who's watching, not just judges, that you understand the integrity of the foundation of what should be done to that song? And as long as you communicate, it's like, yeah, we know what this should be, and you're doing that most of the time, then you have earned the right to break the rules and to have fun with it.
Yeah. It's kind of like that stall in the first song where, that's something that's not, something that you would normally see at all. And, they did it and it fit in well with the music, but, that was just a 3-beat movement, 4-beat movement. Like it wasn't extended and it was a fun addition, but it wasn't the majority of the dance. That's not something that you were seeing as a whole throughout that dance.
I'm
going to say that I think that Victoria, especially in the second song, is adjusting her frame and her connection that she usually uses. It's more loose, I would say, and a lot more malleable. And that's not to say that either is good or bad, but I'm just saying that that's not her baseline generally. And she is adjusting that for this song, for this partner.
Yep.
And that really allows them to work together much better.
And the crowd goes wild.
As
they should. If we ever see each other in person again, we owe each other beverages.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm not sure we've ever actually done that before, which is funny because we do tend to be the same person most of the time. But I don't think we've ever actually said the same thing at the same time. We're leveling up, people.
Yeah.
Just in time for our 1-year anniversary. Hey, segue. So next week, we're doing another video, favorite video, but one of Alicia's favorite dances. It's also my birthday, so if you want to wear party hats, feel free to, or share your favorite cake recipes. I won't stop you. But then we're taking a break but we will be back on Saturday, March 27th at 5 p.m. with our fun size leader panel. The names hurt every time I say it. We got Ben Morris, Maxime Zowie, Miles Monroe, and Robert Royston will be joining us for our fun size leader panel. And we are so excited, and it will be our 1 year Nerdy West Coast Swing anniversary. So pate, nerdiness, shenanigans. It's funny because it's true. It's going to be great. Anyways, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week. Recording of this will be up Sunday.
Yep.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for joining. Night, guys.
What happened?
There was a car that went by and I could hear the music, but it was like this screaming laughing. It was really, really strange.
Shall we just... No. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Can you sense movement in the force?
Yes.
All right, cool. Speaking of which, if you remember at the end of tonight, I have a bad swing Star Wars joke. Remind me to tell that story.
I'll try to remember. Kate said, why do we have to wait?
Make it easier on editing Cassie, who exists in tomorrow's time frame.
I feel like I always have the is it the Jeopardy music?
Yeah.
Whenever we ask that question, that's what always comes into my mind.
Funny is I've been having the same problem sometimes on my coaching calls with my life coaching membership, because there will sometimes we'll have had a really intense conversation about something. I like cracked open their skulls, kind of like whoa kind of situation, and I'm like, okay, process. I'll let you handle what just happened because that was a lot. Anybody else want to work on something? And then it's crickets for like 10 seconds because everybody in the room apparently had their minds blown open. I'm like, okay, I will be the plucky comic relief until somebody's ready for more coaching. Oh, yes. I have my my Star Wars swing story real quick. So for some reason last night, I don't even remember why, I said I would rather have this than for the Force to be real. I don't remember what this was. It's irrelevant at this point. And then my partner, Robert, said, not Royston, obviously, my partner in life, different Robert. It's very, very helpful.
A lot of Roberts.
There's so many Roberts. He said, but if the Force were real and you could use it, you could correct people's swing technique in real time. And I'm like, oh no. I said, I would go dark side so fast. And then I said, Senator Palpaswing.
Oh my gosh.
I dropped the proverbial mic. He stopped being able to breathe. Anyways, that's my yeah, I would be a Sith Lord of Swing.